behind the clouds is the great volcano, the famous volcano Eyjafjallajökull. The volcano and glacier that erupted 3 years ago and stopped all the air traffic in Europe for several days and interrupted the air traffic in the whole world for several days. And this was an eruption that started in April 2010, and the volcano hadn't erupted for almost 200 years. The last eruption was in the year 1821, and it lasted for 2 years. So when the volcano started to erupt 3 years ago, people feared that, or the scientists feared that it could take maybe 2 or 3 years. But luckily it only lasted for 6 weeks. But this was a big eruption, and there was a great ash fall. This was not a lava eruption, it was an ash eruption, so there was an ash cloud that went up to the air about 20 kilometers high, and there was a great ash fall. Luckily the wind was from the north, so most of the ash just fell into the sea. But there are farms on the southern slopes of the volcano, and they got very badly struck by the ash fall for many days, and people there, they couldn't see the light of day. It was completely dark and the ground was covered with ash. So this was a hard time for these farmers, but 3 years later you can hardly see that anything happened, and the ash turned out to be fertile, so the grass is even greener today than it was 3 years ago. But because it interrupted the air traffic in the world for several days, this was of course headline news all over the world. The television stations and the news reporters weren't very worried about what happened to the farmers here on the southern slope. It was more whether one flight would be delayed for 1 or 2 or 3 days. So this was headline news all over the world, and there were reporters from all over the world that came to Iceland, and they had this difficult task of pronouncing this word, the name of the volcano, Eyjafjallajökull. And this is a difficult word because there are 2 double L's in it, and there were very strange versions of this word all over the world. And one of the editors in the Icelandic television, he, just for the fun of it, he edited together about 20 different versions of how reporters all over the world pronounced Eyjafjallajökull. And this was shown in the Icelandic television, and it was quite hilarious and a great laugh in Iceland. I think you can see it on YouTube today. But I especially remember one version, I think it was in the Japanese television, when the announcer or the reporter there, he pronounced Eyjafjallajökull as oi 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 oi. But there was a wind direction for several a change of wind direction for several days, and you can see the ashfall here, the gravel here. This is ash from the eruption. It fell down here for 2 or 3 days. But when there is an eruption in a volcano that is also a glacier, the ice melts and there is bound to be a flood down the slopes of the volcano, and there was just a question where this flood would run or flow, and it turned out to be that it flowed down the northern slopes of the volcano and took a slight left turn and flowed here in front of the mountain that you see here coming into sight now. And it joined a glacial river, the flood joined a glacial river that runs here, and has run here for centuries. And this glacial river was about 40 times as big as it is usually. And we will drive, we will cross this area that the flood came down, and you will see how catastrophic this was. And in front of us and a little bit to the left you see a waterfall. This is the waterfall that we will stop at later today. This is our last stop today on our way back. And this is the waterfall where you can walk behind it. And there is a bridge over this glacial river here, and when the flood came down, the bridge was saved by cutting the road from it on both sides of the bridge. So the scientists could predict it, that the flood would come this way, so workers cut the road on both sides of the bridge in order to save the bridge. And here the road was cut and the flooded here all over. You can see this vast area here on the right side. This was all covered in water. And there is a lot of water in the glacial river today, but it was, you can duplicate it with around 40 times. And I can see there is a lot of water too in the waterfall, so it will be an experience to walk behind it later today. And in the distance here to the right you can see mountains. These are actual islands, the Vestmann Islands, south of Iceland. 15 rocky islands, and the largest one is called Heimaey, and there is a village there of 4,000 people.